Yo guys, I'm Mikey Microphone, and the microphone is a metaphor for the fact that you have something beautiful to say, but you need to make the arrangements so that you can be heard. Now, in my case, the arrangements that I'm making is this book writing platform that I've created on wayswemage.com, and I'm about ready to share it with other authors, see if they want to write something. And there's one thing that I want to do before I do that, which is finish the chapter editing interface. I already have good interfaces to edit paragraphs, sections, citations, and the last thing that I need is being able to edit chapters, to move them around, reorder them, to remove them, delete them from the new edition, because you can save old editions as you edit the new ones, and then to rename them, as well as adding new chapters. So I'm going to be using the same tool set that I have here. So I have promote, edit, remove, and then write, and delay is the one for moving it into the following chapter. If you want to move it into the preceding chapter, what you do is reorder the chapters for a second, then delay it, and then move it back. And I'm not sure if I'm going to need to back that up with something that moves it into the previous chapter or not. But for now, you just move it into the following chapter. Okay, so I'm not connected to the internet today. So you can see some of my fonts are loaded, but some of them are not. So we're going to see how this works out. But I'm also going to show you that it's possible to do this type of programming when you're not online. So let's edit this chapter. Okay, so I have the promote link here. I already have a tool set for reordering chapters. I don't have an edit, I don't have a remove, so I'm going to start by adding those. So I'll go ahead and open up the chapters controller. Okay, so there's an edit link here. And that's actually the interface that you see here. Editing chapter by chapter instead of editing the whole book at once, which you saw on the last screen. So I think what I should do is rename that one, because canonically edit means editing this data, the title and the subtitle. So I'll try renaming that one to edit chapter. And I guess what I'll do is go back to this whole book interface, which is where the edit chapter link exists, and rename this to edit chapter. Go to my roots. Okay, so I can see there's a chapters group here, but that's within books. There's also a chapters thing here. I'm going to look at how that link is spelled out now. I don't think it really matters whether I nest that inside the books resource or not. Let's see if I can come up with a good reason to do it one way or another. Okay, edit chapter. Edit chapter path. Okay, so this is currently not nested within the books resource. So I'll just stick with what I have. There's another link to this method right here. The previous chapter and next chapter are links to that same action. So I'll take a look at where those are being generated. And these are also not using the root that is nested within the book's controller. So I am passing the book ID as part of the link, but if they were nested, then the book would appear as part of the method name. And basically the first argument would be the book and the second would be the chapter. Okay, so let's see what this is talking about. Div with data. So it looks like I'm calling ID on an object that it didn't find. On line 1 of edit HTML. Okay, so I didn't find the book for some reason. Oh, because I've just now changed the name of this method so that it didn't run this code because it was looking for edit. I changed the name to edit chapter. So going into the roots, and edit chapter is not going to be a collection root, it's going to be something that acts on a specific book. So I'll make edit chapter, and then I'll change so that actually would generate a root called edit chapter path. I think a better term is edit as chapter. So I'll go ahead and make edit as, and then here edit as chapter path. So I'll refresh this so that these links are generated by that code. And you can see now my fonts have gone away. So this is interesting. It's using the default font. I didn't give it a backup. I was thinking about backing it up with the sans serif font, but for actually reading, serif fonts are easier to read. So as this is a book, I'm thinking it might be okay, looks like I did put that in the nested root group. Yeah, there it is. Remember to get edit as. See how it said edit as book chapter path, and I decided that wasn't necessary, so I think overall the nested roots have kind of gone out of style. They are very elegant for some purposes, like comments on a blog post. Rails helpers allow you to kind of use both the creation and fetching tools in a way that is scoped there, and the URLs look really nice because it starts with the book and then, or starts with the post and then shows the comment. But the benefits that people got from that weren't always very different from what they get from just going directly to the comments. So I'll go back to the chapter that I was planning to edit, which is this one. And now it's probably going to say there's no template available. So just going to rename the template that I have here. Missing template. Okay, try refreshing this. Okay, great. There it is. And now I'll update these links so that they lead also to the same template. Okay. So now I will refer to the sections controller to see what an edit should look like. So I noticed last night, so throughout this series I've been talking about potentially moving all of this shared logic into a different controller. And I realized last night that maybe the controller will just be a table of content controller, because that's often what the object that I'm acting on and the object that I'm editing. So that might be the proper way to handle that refactor, and I imagine that some of you watching this video have already noticed that, so that's great. Let me know if you agree. So I'm going to go ahead here and make edit, change this to chapter, then I'll make an edit JS template. And I'll refer to sections because I'm, again, trying to basically mirror the activity. So the chapter and chapter. This section editing system is replacing a div called data on section. So I'm going to look into doing the same with data on chapter, because the only thing that I want to replace is the top part, not the entire part. The div for the chapter itself is containing all this stuff, and I don't want to hide the whole thing while I'm editing the name, so I'm going to look into just naming this and this is all spelled out right here. So I'm going to say div for chapter data on do, and I'm going to nest this whole thing inside there. Okay, so I currently have the existing edit link, which is promote, here in the chapter, in the template that renders the chapter along with the previous chapter and next chapter interface. So the rest of this template is designed to be shared between this view and the previous one, which shows all the chapters. I would like the editing tools to also be visible in that template, so I'm going to move the tools into the template that is shared. I'll do that when I get to the promote. Okay. Okay, so this says section form. I'll change that to chapter form. And looking at the chapters helper, I do have a chapter form. Cool. I wasn't sure if I would have that yet. I suppose it's being used for adding a new chapter. Yeah, that's what it's used for. So I'm going to change this around so that it mirrors the structure of the sections helper. So it starts by taking a table of content, and then by taking a section. So this is going to start with the table of content, and chapter equals chapter.new. Hanging the chapter off the edition like you saw there was a kind of relic of the very first way that I structured this, where the chapter actually belonged directly to the edition rather than going through the table of content model. I think that's the reason I did it that way. It may have also just been a way to embed the edition ID in the, well, actually here's how it embedded the edition ID. I guess after you embed it in the object, you have to also embed it in the form. That's the only way that it actually gets back to the server. So I'm going to remove this and replace this with table of content ID. Okay. So this form is carrying the ID append chapter to edition, and it's going to have that whether or not I'm creating a new chapter or editing an existing one. For now, I think that's okay. The main situation where that would be an issue is if I was doing both at the same time and both forms were present, like if I was mid-edit and I wanted to start doing something else. I would like to support that use case in the long run, but I'm not going to worry about it for the time being. Another thing that occurs to me is I've used append a lot throughout these controllers. I think I should probably just change that to new. So that can be another thing to look forward to. Okay, so I now have the controller action, the template, and the code that the template will run. I've also created the div that this form is going to be taking the place of. So now I can create the link that will lead to that. And I'll put it in here. Okay, so this is referring to a variable that, actually I think I did get around to passing that in here. Chapter table of content is table of content, great. So I do have access to a variable called chapter table of content. And now I can write the helper that is going to generate these links. Okay, so I'm going to replace section with chapter, but before I do that, I'm going to replace chapter with edition. That way I won't have any remaining chapter references that need to be changed after they all say chapter. And I think there's just going to be those three. Great, so now I can change section to chapter. Okay. So some of these links are not going to work yet because we haven't created all these tools that are here for editing. So chapters already has a remove, it already has a destroy, which is what this link will lead to. It may not have a action in the controller for destroy, but it does have a root in the roots because this method creates that already. So the only link that's not going to work is delay. So I'm going to try just commenting that out for now and see if the rest of this will just work. Okay. That looks like a syntax error, which is plausible because of all the nesting and stuff. Yeah, syntax error, unexpected keyword end. It says on, oh, it says it's in the controller. Or no, rather, it is in the helper. Ah, that's because I forgot to remove this. Okay, so there is now, that's the sections toolset, and this is the chapters toolset. So let's see what happens if I click edit. Okay, it worked. So now I need an update action on the controller side. And I will copy this code. I'll replace this with chapter. Chapter. It's grabbing all the contained sections, paragraphs, and citations so that they can all be updated with the new ID, because what I'm doing is not actually editing the chapter data, the chapter record that I have. I'm actually creating a new chapter and replacing it within the table of contents. So that way the old chapter data can still remain for old editions and any other books that also contain the same chapter. Okay, so that I expect to work, and then I'll need an update action for here. Refer to this. Okay. Okay. I'll say the most fundamental dilemma. Okay, let's see what's happening on the server side. Undefined method title for table of content. So let's see what gives me the line number of that. Okay. Fortunately, it didn't do that. So I have a error tracking system called Rollbar installed, and since I'm not connected to the net right now, Rollbar was not able to report the error. I'm thinking about turning Rollbar off when I'm in development mode, but I haven't done that yet. So looks like the stack trace is here. I can see that this is basically showing me the trace. Let's see if there's like a top line of it. Trace chain, frames, file name, thread pool. Okay, so that's more likely to be the bottom line. Method missing. Okay. Exception. Attribute methods. Chapter control. Line number 16, chapters helper. Okay, so I found it right here. And let's look at the chapters helper. Okay, so chapter control is now set up to take a table of content. Okay, so this has created another error, which says undefined method ordering for nil class. Don't really know exactly where that will have cropped up, so looking again at this part of the stack trace. It's line number 64 of edit as. The chapters controller, line number 64. Okay. So the error happened here. I was looking for the table of content. This query basically looking for the current chapter. Okay, so since I created a new chapter and replaced that one with this chapter is no longer in this edition. Chapter number 7, it's not referring to the order of the chapter in the book, it's referring to the order of it's referring to the position of the chapter in the database. So okay, so this is now chapter 48. That's why when I tried to refresh that page against the URL that said chapter/7, it didn't know which chapter to render. So I'll see if this template is ready to go now. Okay, so this has rendered the template, but it didn't update the interface. Let's see if we can determine why. Okay. So this form says append chapter to edition 6. Append chapter to edition. Looking at the update script, it says append section. Okay, append chapter to edition. Okay, so this is again going to break because it doesn't have the correct ID. I'll stop this and go to the next chapter. Edit this. Have a little historical reference there, but might not need it. Okay. So it rendered something which is visually not identical to what I had. And this is it's a kind of a hint at the question of whether these controls, section control, chapter control, paragraph control, citation control, whether they should contain the nested things or whether they should not contain that stuff. I was thinking about making them contain it so that the control would actually cascade all the way down to the leaves of the tree, but it seems like if I want to use the control for both rendering and rendering updates, then they should probably remain atomic and not contain the children and grandchildren. Maybe what I'll do is write a different method that does contain it, and then that method will just call chapter control. When in doubt, it never hurts to have two methods instead of one. So just looking quickly at chapter control. Okay, so it does start by rendering a div with data. And again, in reference to having two methods instead of one, I'm going to make that. Let's see if where chapter control is actually being used. Okay. So it's only being used in create and update. It's not being used in the templates that render the chapter in its entirety. So this doesn't need to be a div with data. I'm going to make it into a div similar to this stuff. Data on chapter, and then all this. The header, chapter title, subtitle of, header, subtitle. Okay, so I think it's missing this. That was one that I added more recently to assist with the styling. And then this will be a div for chapter data on. Okay, I'll go to the next chapter. Whoops. See where my syntax error is. Okay, I need to surround that with I would say I need to surround it with parentheses, but I'm not appending it to anything, so this is what needs to be surrounded. And this actually does not, because this is not being directly appended to anything with a plus sign. Okay, so it looks like all the styling is good. See if I can do sequential edits. Okay, so this link is not having the correct ID. Remember, the chapter now has a new ID. So I'm gonna make those links part of the chapter control. So looking at this template here, I can replace this whole thing with the chapter control, and I'm going to put this in there too. So it's all going to be re-rendered after the update. So I'll just place this in chapter control chapter. And then I'll go into chapters helper. And then call this method from there. Okay, so I have now edited this. It's going to be a different Okay, now that I'm directly appending this to something, it needs to have parentheses. Okay. Let's see if we can find the line number. Exception, method miss, oh shit. Okay. Aha, I have to pass the table of content. Okay. So now if I edit this, okay, interesting. These links did not go away because the only part of the markup that was replaced was the div that was preceding them. Okay, so this is coverage of Magic's biggest tournaments. This is a relevant thing to say, but for new players, it's not that important. gives a clear appraisal of where the game is each week. Okay, so now we have two groups of links here. I'll just see if this will work for sequential edits. Okay, it worked for sequential edits. So I'll see about just moving. I could make it so that this edit template has another line to just remove the edit controls. Let me think, do I want the data on div to also include the edit controls? Yeah, I can't really decide. And then just find the name for what the edit controls are. DOM ID chapter controls 4. Okay. Okay. So a neat trick would be to also update the address bar. Now, when I use that method, I'm not going to know whether I'm on this interface or the one where the whole book is being displayed. Let's see, I could say window.location. Okay, JavaScript regex is a little, the syntax is a little weird to me. Let me see if I have an example. I do here. Vertices, and then vertices come out. Okay. I guess I could just say dot match, see what happens. Window.location dot match edit as window.location equals edit as chapter path chapter. And this has the book ID. That probably won't be necessary based on the way that I'm refactoring this, but at the moment I think the template is being rendered with that assumption that it has access to that. So I'll just put it in there. Okay. Okay, so that didn't change. Aha, I need to escape this for JavaScript. Okay, so let's look at what has happened here. Why is it not giving me the XHRs? Try editing again. I'll go back to wonky. Okay, I put this in the wrong place. This should go on the update script. Interesting thing is I think when I change window.location, it might reload the page. It might actually send me to that address, not just change the... You can change the address bar if you are changing something after this, like Bingus. But I think if I change this, it's probably going to actually go ahead and perform a full refresh. Might have some bad side effects there, like if I was in the middle of editing something else. So, might be a bit of a dilemma there. Through your deck. Undefined method book ID. Okay, this is chapter table of content. Okay, so this is still on chapter 54. Okay, this is a case where I have to reload to get the new data. We went through this in... Interesting that I already reloaded it here, but I guess this one is still the one that's in memory. I mean, looking at what the reloaded one got, these links are now pointing to 59 if you look at the address bar at the or the status bar at the bottom of the screen. Pro-tour coverage, okay. Almost every weekend. Okay, so this once again did not change the address bar. Let's look at the if. Okay. Let's see what this gives me. Window.location.href.match. Okay. So window.location is a more complex object. It's not just a string. But let's see what happens if, oh, and this should be probably, okay, so it is trying to reload something here. Oh, it's still looking on 53 when we're actually up to 60. Is that because I was still working? Yeah, I was still working with the payload that came back before I edited this, I think. Yeah, come on. All of the links that I've been to are no longer chapters that are in that book. Okay. So with roll bar timing out, it's like delaying the operation of my server here. So let's see if it'll respond to me now. Okay. I'm going to take a quick break and pick this up in the next video.